Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk to you about my favorite way to sharpen a knife and what I think is the fastest and most efficient technique, and that's sharpening on a belt sander. Sharpening on something like water stones also works really well, and I have a video on how I do that too, but personally nothing else compares to the speed of the belt sander. It allows me to take a really dull knife to razor sharp in under 10 minutes, and today I'm going to show you how I do that. The knife I'm going to be sharpening today is this 8-inch Damascus chef knife that I just finished up. And I haven't even set the edge on it yet, so I can actually just rub my finger on here without worrying about cutting myself. So let's head out to the shop and get sharpening. I'm going to be using 3 belts to do the sharpening. I'm going to start with a 120 grit belt to set the edge and raise the burr. And then I'm going to polish it up using an A45 Trizact belt, which is around 400 grit. And then finally, the last belt is an optional leather belt that I have loaded with green chromium oxide polishing compound. These leather belts are pretty expensive at around $70, so if you want, you can just use a hand strop and that'll work perfectly fine. I like to sharpen on this area, just above the top platen wheel, because it gives me a little bit of a convex edge. And then I also have this little light that I have clipped onto the grinder, and that helps you just see where the burr is. The benefit of the speed of belt sander knife sharpening can also be a downside, because you can screw up really quickly and also ruin the temper on your edge. So what I like to do is turn the speed of my grinder all the way down to 40 or 50%, and that allows me to have more control and prevent heat buildup. Now that it's time to sharpen, let's get our protective gear on, turn on the grinder, and raise the burr using the 120 grit belt. I sharpen with the knife's edge running in the same direction as the belt, and I use very little to no pressure and about a 15-degree angle. I find that you get the best control when you have one hand holding the handle of the knife and your other one around the tip, because it helps you guide the knife's edge along the belt. It's a little bit hard to see, but here you can see that I raised the burr on the edge. And that's just, you can feel by rubbing your finger along the edge, and then it'll kind of catch your finger pad. So now what I'm going to do is polish it up using that Trizact belt. If you look closely here at the edge, you can see the burr forming really clearly. It's just that little silver wire that's forming on the opposite side of the edge that you're sharpening. Once you're at the leather belt, I just go back and forth until I see the burr disappear from the edge. If you're using a hand strap, it's the same basic concept, and I have another video on our page showing how I use those too. I'll link that in the description below. The leather strap belt removes the burr and gives the edge a really nice shine. I like my edges to have a little bit of tooth on them, so that's why I quit at 400 grit before stropping. But if you want, they make belts that go all the way up to around like 2,000 or 3,000 grit, and that'll give you a really nice mirror polish after stropping. And the very last thing to do is test out the sharpness, and I like to do that using some phone book paper. And now for my favorite test, the guillotine phone book cut. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that if you don't already have a 2x72 grinder or want to spend a lot of money on one, you can use a 1x30 sander from somewhere like Harbor Freight, and those are pretty inexpensive and work really well if you run them on their back. They just run a little bit fast, so you have to go slowly, but they're what I learned how to sharpen on, and they work really well. And that's how I sharpen knives on my belt sander. It's my favorite method of sharpening, and I can't think of too many other methods that you can take a totally dull knife to razor sharp in under 10 minutes. The speed makes it a little bit easy to make mistakes, but if you go slowly and maybe practice on your cheap knives before moving on to the expensive ones, it's really not that bad. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me in the comments section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and stay sharp.